a lot. I want to share today's agenda with you guys. Our first speaker is Wei Ming, and we'll follow by Dami. And after these two presentations, our co-founder from AlphaCam, Bernard, will host a panel discussion. Also, we will answer some of your questions in the end of the panel discussion.
And thanks for the presentation, was very informative. I think there was a lot to learn and a lot to take away from your presentation. Thanks a lot. Yeah, so next, hello everyone. Today I would like to sort of, let's say, build up on what Wei Ming was just sharing, and maybe I will want to touch a bit upon the role of the engineering manager particularly. And the note in the title is because I think at the end of the presentation, I hope you have enough information to decide whether this is a role you would like to try and take, or actually you think that's not a step that makes sense for your career progression. So yeah, hello everyone. My name is Damiano. I've been in Taiwan for 9 years now. I'm based here. So in this part of the world, people just call me Dami. It's probably easier to pronounce. And a bit about myself. I work for Carousel. I'm engineering director and Taiwan site lead. Right now I work with teams based across different countries, India, Vietnam, Singapore, and Taiwan, of course. And yeah, today's presentation, I would like to structure it in 3 parts. First part, I want to share about engineering career ladders, to explain a bit about where the role of engineering manager sits normally in an engineering org. Secondly, I would like to talk about the importance of having a plan when you are trying to become an engineering manager. And finally, some of the things that you would want to consider and prepare beforehand. One thing, like I'm happy when you guys type in the chat. So whenever you have questions or you think things are not explained clearly or you want to know more, please, I'll try to take into account your feedback and adjust accordingly. So yeah, feel free to type anything. Okay, moving on. The first part is about engineering career ladders. So I guess you might be familiar with a career ladder like this one, where regardless of the size of the organization, but usually an engineer goes from fresh grad to junior engineer, senior engineer, then lead engineer. Maybe in your organization there are different names for this role, but basically that's usually what a career progression usually looks like. And the funny thing is that it's debatable where the engineering manager role sits in such a career path. So some people put it here. It's a sort of promotion being an engineering manager, as like, okay, now that you have been in the role for such a long time, you should take engineering manager role, which is something that I really don't like, and I don't understand, because actually the way many organizations are structured, especially if they are of a certain size, is that for engineers there are dual career path. So that's why it's engineering career ladders. So what it means by that is that there is, on the left-hand side, there is the career progression of what is usually called an IC, or individual contributor. And that can go up as much as you want. Like, you'll be a principal engineer, you can be an architect, a lead architect, and so on and so forth. And then there is another parallel path which is about engineering management, which is the path we will talk about today. So from engineering manager to senior to director, and then up to VP of engineering, and so on and so forth. So the first moment of interaction here is like, I would like to see people, ask people like, which one of these arrows do you think will apply? So how do people reach the engineering manager? Because we see the starting point, but we don't know where the arrow starts from. So do you think it's the red arrow, the one that apply? Is it the purple, or is it blue, or all of them? What do you guys think? It's how someone moves from an individual track to a management track. I see some group bias confirmation here, where someone starts writing all and everybody writes all. Yeah, it depends. I think that's the best answer for everything. Red, blue. Okay, so my answer, I mean, I think there are several answers, and depends on your organization, but at least my answer is that the red does not apply. And I can explain about the other. So why did I remove the red? Because I really do not see moving to a people management track as part of a promotion, because it's the skill set required and the type of know-how required is very different. It's really like having a career shift, and that's why we will touch upon let's say having a plan and being prepared in advance. So there's of course a lot of learning that happens in the left-hand side in the IC track that can be leveraged in the engineering manager position for sure. But I disagree when in some organizations engineering manager is seen as a reward. So usually what most commonly happen is the purple. So someone is a certain level of seniority, and then so let's say lead engineer, and then transition on taking people management responsibilities. The blue one is tricky, because basically we're talking about someone who has progressed to a level of expertise which is way beyond what an engineering manager would be, and maybe naturally people would expect them to transit horizontally to be a senior engineering manager. But the thing is that the additional the incremental knowledge that they acquired is more relevant to the individual contributor track and might not apply in the people manager. So maybe it will be faster for them to move from engineering manager to senior engineering manager, but regardless, they need to start from engineering manager somehow. So yeah, of course, these are some of the possibilities. Again, it really depends on the organization, but at least, let's say, I hope this triggers some thoughts for you, and maybe you can share your opinion later. Second part is like, okay, let's assume that still you think that becoming an engineering manager is a good option, and you decide to take on this. My suggestion is that you need a plan. You need to time box something. You need to sort of decide what you want to achieve in which amount of time, and you need to actually be very deliberate about how you're going to plan your time, how you're going to plan your learning path, and what are the areas where you want to focus on first. So I'll briefly try to visualize some of the reason why you would need a plan in case you still have some doubts. So this is not let's say data. This is information gathered asking other leaders or in general. Okay, so it's probably the number is not completely accurate, but is almost there. So on average, only 1 out of 15 engineering managers receive formal training. So if you don't have a plan, you would be one of the 14th, and it's going to be a difficult journey. I'm one of the 14th, by the way. I also didn't receive any formal training. Second, let's say data I would like to share, like 75% have reported that trial and error is the most effective method for learning, because they don't receive formal training. So the only way that they can try is actually trial and error. But trial and error with code, you know very well that it's okay. Worst you can do, you ship a bug in production. A trial and error with people, it's a different story, and it can lead to very bad feelings. So yeah, it's not suggested. Last is like 40% of engineering manager usually, okay, again, take this number with some grain of salt. They have learned just by observing peer managers. So maybe they look at their managers and they just mimic whatever their manager is doing, or they see other managers in their organization and they just say, okay, Wai-Ming is doing like this, I should do the same. So all in all, if I were to summarize, these stats, accurate or not, to me it sounds a bit scary. It sounds that all in all, taking on the role of engineering management without an actual plan, without being deliberate about it, it's more or less a recipe for disaster, or a recipe for failure. So it's better to be more, again, master of your own destiny, be deliberate about what you want to achieve from your career progression, and try to address those critical aspects of that might come in accepting a new role. Okay, the last part I would like to share about is like some of the things that you would need to consider and be prepared beforehand. Some of them might be controversial, so I hope so, so that there will be some reaction there. So the first aspect is about so when you are an engineering manager, which direction do you need to manage? So the most obvious one is that you need to manage downwards. So you have a group of people, you have some engineers, and you are their manager. At some point, you are appointed so, and you feel the big sense of responsibility that you have to manage them. You have to be accountable for them. That's true, and that's important, and definitely that should be in your mind. But there's another direction where you should manage as well, which is managing upwards. That's something that hopefully you have been learning while being a lead engineer or a tech lead. But it's important basically to keep the information loop with your manager, and make sure that your manager is aware of the important things that are happening within the team, not only about project updates like we were mentioning earlier, but also about the team morale, and also understanding what are some of the challenges the teams are facing. You suddenly are the one that can make a big difference for your team, and it all depends on how well you are able to manage upwards, because that will help you building the trust with your manager, and therefore build the team's trust in your manager's eyes. And actually, there's another arrow that is often forgotten, and it's the horizontal one, which is actually you need to manage your peers. Managing your peers means that Now, of course, it all depends on the size of your organization. If there is only one team and you're the only engineering manager, that arrow is maybe pointless. But managing, if your organization starts scaling and there are multiple teams, you should always keep an eye on or have a good relationship with the other managers. Actually, arguably, those are your the best resource you might have at in many points in time, because they are actually in the same positions that you are. They are facing similar difficulties like you, and having a good relationship with them can be a win or lose type of defining point when there is need to collaborate between the teams. So if your team is delivering an important project and you need something from another team and you don't have a good relationship with the manager for that team, yeah, chances that probably your project will not be delivered well. That's one aspect, but it could be also that you can leverage that to learn how to handle some unexpected situation happening to one of your team members. Okay, the other aspect I would like to, let's say, prepare whoever decides to take on this path is like, it's about the motivation. So I think it's very important if you want to take on the role of engineering manager, well, or any other role actually, but particularly for the role of engineering manager, you need to understand what is that motivates you. I mean, why are you doing it? So are you doing it because you want to please your manager? Are you doing it because you want to actually try and advance in your career? Status quo or anything? It looks nicer on the name card to actually have a word manager or whatever. Or are you doing it because you're the only one in the team who actually have the ability to do it? Now, if your motivation is among these three, I would argue that there is a big risk that you would fail as a manager, or you would not like being a manager. The reason, some of the motivation you should have, or if not all of the motivation you should have, should be behind things like when you are thinking about growth, you should think that the only way you can consider growth for you and in general for your team is when you are involving others in this equation. So growing yourself, growing your team has to go through the growth of your team members, the growth of your team experience, and the growth of the challenges that your team can handle. Another point is about empathy. Maybe this word is a bit abused recently, but it's not something that some people think that they have it or not. It's something that everybody can develop. It's basically about having sincere interest about what others are feeling and what is the point of view that others have in at any given point in time. A good example of that, if you are remembering of a conflict and you have to describe a conflict to a peer, to a colleague, or to someone, if you are able to actually describe the state of mind that you think the other person in the conflict was at, you probably have already started developing some level of empathy. If the only way you describe a conflict is just by describing what you feel and what the other have been falling short at, yeah, maybe you need to work on it. The last point is about trust. It's very common to think about how much trust we ask to others. You wanted to be trusted by your manager to have a bigger project. You wanted to be trusted by your product manager that you will be able to deliver on time or whatever, but you need to give it the same. You need to be open to actually trust others as much as you want others to trust you. So anyway, these are some of the things that you should reflect on why you want to become an engineering manager. If the last three are more or less aligned with your motivation, those are good signs. Okay, let's go to another controversial one, which is say goodbye to coding. Now, I put it there in a bold way. Of course, there are different flavors of that. I'm not saying you should not code at all, or you should completely, let's say, uninstall all your coding tools. But you need to accept that your time is probably better spent on other things. For many engineers, coding is a way of relaxing. Coding is a way of expressing themselves. Coding is the familiar territory, is the area where we know we are extremely good at. But when we are taking a role that involve people management, we can have a huge impact on people's lives one way or another, and we need to do what it's asked us to do, or what is best for the team, rather than do only what we like. And if the best use of our time is actually to not code, we should do so. But of course, if we still think that we have time for coding, definitely. I'm always trying to find a strange project where I can still code, but yeah, it's getting trickier and trickier. So yeah, just to summarize briefly, and that's my last slide, and I'm done. So these are some of the things you need to accept, or sort of, let's say, be prepared if you want to start the journey of becoming an engineering manager. So learn how to manage in three directions, understand what is the real motivation behind this decision, and yeah, adjust your coding time. Yeah, that's all. Thanks everyone, and thanks also for the interaction in the chat. Giving it back to Bernard, I guess, and yeah, happy to chat with you more. Please connect if you have more things you would like to ask.
Right. Thanks, Dami. That was great. Oh, hi everyone. It comes to this kind of panel Q&A section now. I'm Bernard, so I'm a CEO and co-founder of AlphaCamp. And thanks for my team for putting this great session together. I've learned a lot. Just a brief intro of myself. I actually started my career as an engineer as well. I'm actually a hardware, like IC designer. And I also pursue management in the wrong way. I was like, that's a career advancement. I also was thinking, management were making a lot of bad choices. So I was like, I should be able to do it better. So I went to do an MBA. That's kind of like how I was thinking, get into management or business. But an MBA doesn't really teach you anything about management. That's, you can hear that from me. But it does put you in the right context, right group. So if anyone interested in kind of that questions, feel free in the chat as well. But tonight, I'm going to lead the conversations and facilitate with the guests tonight, answer some of the questions. So let me get right to it. So the first question is, I think Dami just answered this. Do you still code? Apparently, the answer is no, uninstall your VS Code. But I think that the deeper question is then, and I'll feed it to Dami, are you concerned about your competency? Are you concerned about, losing touch with technology, or God forbid, if you have to switch jobs or go somewhere else, what happens if you have like an engineering manager who have not been coding for a while?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, I'm always concerned. I'm very pessimistic about my career. I'm always wondering whether I'm doing a good job, whether and so on. But yeah, to take that question seriously, there are other ways. So to the first question, I don't actively write code that is shipped on production for my company right now. Fortunately, so for the company, I do still like to play around with code, but nothing that can harm users. But there are other ways again. I mean, I try to read a lot, and I try to try sandbox things that are coming up. Since Wei-Ming is from data, I was playing with some Python data analysis tool recently. I mean, I'll try to understand things that I'm curious about, that I know nothing about, and I just keep trying and keep learning other things. But I'm concerned, sure.
Thank you. So I think the idea is try to keep learning. I think, and if you can find some time to code some project. From what I know, a lot of engineering managers, CTOs actually use it as a therapy, right? That extra couple hours a week to be able to build something that he enjoys. Okay, great. Next questions. I think the next two questions are similar, and I'll combine them together. They are from one of our teaching assistants, Tim. How do you help the team to grow, especially in the world of engineering, software, technology? You got to learn new things all the time, different tools, different technology, different framework. But teams are usually busy as well. So how do you help them grow, give them time to learn? Kind of on a similar note, but maybe a different track is, and especially if you need them to do things that might not be as rewarding, right? There's a lot of, definitely in any job, there's grunt work to do. How do you motivate them? So I kind of combine the two. Dami, what's your thought? Maybe especially on, when you need the team to do something that they might not truly enjoy, or they might not be that exciting?
Well, let me get to that in a second. One thing about individual growth, personal growth, is that I believe it has to come from the individual first. So usually I try to encourage the team or the team members to actually own their own. So I try to ask them, what is it that you want to learn? And if there is a strong motivation from the individual to actually decide on what to do next and what to take on, usually there's not a problem of time. I'm taking my personal time to learn. It's a deliberate decision. Sometimes I do, sometimes I not. On let's say convincing them on working on things that are necessary but not exactly fun, I guess it's a matter of understanding what's the impact behind those. They might not be fun, but they might actually, I don't know, either generate revenue, make the user experience better, and so on. And that usually is a good angle. Yeah, that's maybe a short answer.
Got it. So I think that's really interesting, because I have seen managers that are trying to get the team all kinds of courses. It's more like the parents sending the kids to all these different, cello classes. And it turns out the guy is not actually motivated to learn. So I do really agree with them. I think it all starts with hiring, like picking the right people that are self-motivated. And once you got that, I think, like Wei-Ming said, prioritize, give them the time.
Yeah.
And on the, less glamour work, on any benefit from the work, I think that's the ability of a manager to tell a bigger story, right? To actually help them understand the impact. I think these are all really good tips. Hawaiian pizza is actually one of my favorite. Just saying. Okay.
No, I have something to do. Sorry.
All right. Last comment on pizza. Okay. So I think as a manager, I think that's what, the part of the fun of being in the middle. You have to make a lot of choices. Sometimes the choices are easy, sometimes it's hard. And this one is one of them, asked by Travis. How do you balance between building an ideal architecture, right? So I think going after, technical excellence versus the timeline that from stakeholders, your boss, your client, your salesperson, your investor give you, right? The person who gets to make the call actually does not necessarily have the easiest job. What should the engineering manager position himself in this situation? Dami, what do you usually do in this kind of case?
Well, I think maybe I changed my opinion on this. When I was at the beginning of my career, I would have tried to pursue the former. I mean, ideal architecture and so on. I changed my my mind a lot. At the end of the day, no matter you are an engineering manager or you are a product manager or you are a designer, an engineer, I mean, someone working on delivering a product or a user experience or something, the focus that I have is on the impact. So what is the impact, the maximum impact that you can generate in a given amount of time? And that's let's say at least the question that I try to address whenever this trade-off comes up. And another way to look at let's say building ideal architecture, to me, it reminds me of, for example, tech debt or things that let's say workarounds that are built time over time. It's important also to always have a view of what is the level of the tech debt that a team is sitting on, and how it is distributed, because eventually, if building something in a given screen, for example, takes 2x of the time it would take if that screen would have been well built or well written. If you start summing up how much time you're spending, and then you decide to invest on actually refactoring that part, it might actually pay back on developer experience. It might pay back in let's say easier to troubleshoot and so on. So it's always a difficult trade-off. But on these, I know we're talking about engineering managers, but actually engineers can do a lot to help engineering manager from this aspect, because for when we are the one that are touching the code on a day-to-day basis, we know very well where it smells. We know very well the parts that we never want to touch, and that's so how we can inform our manager or tell our manager, look, I want to spend the next 2 weeks just fixing this. I think that's how I would. I mean, sorry, long answer, but yeah, I thought it would connect well.
All right, and I'll kind of traffic cop this thing, so maybe one at a time. I'll start with Dami. So, from our friend at Descartes, what's the most important mindset as a manager should have? I think you kind of mentioned the 4 things, empathy and so forth. Anything you want to add, or any, want to distill to a particular one sentence thing?
I think if I have anything to add is about don't have a preconcept about reaching out for help. And what I mean by reaching out to help is usually one of the suggestions that is often ignored is to find a buddy, a partner, a mentor, someone outside of, more than once actually, that can support you, back you up, or actually can hear you out. Because more often than not, when you are asked to take decisions without having the possibility to discuss with anyone, and it can get very lonely and tough. So yeah, having your own network or building your own safety group that can I don't know. I mean, so the mindset is about being open. Don't think that you need to have all the answers. Yeah, being humble. Yeah.
All right. Actually, that's a good one. I'll also this will be the last 2 on the management piece, and then we'll move into kind of the broader macro, because one of the key topics that we want to talk about tonight also is, with the economy shifting, everyone hear about layoffs. What does the future holds for engineers or engineering manager? But I think this is an important one, because we all have different styles, right? We talk about giving feedback to our teams and managing up and down. How do you get assessment on your own strategy style? How do you know how to improve? Right? You got that, I think, once every 6 months performance review, 360 upward, or whatever you call it. I think that's one angle. But what tools do you guys use to get feedback on your own management style?
Okay, sorry, I can start first. So yeah, definitely we have yearly review. We also have a yearly pulse check where it's like company wise and it's completely anonymous. So but then we can sort of, let's say, filter out by team. So I can know, let's say, how my org is going. And those are usually tough times when you see the results coming up. Yeah, it's a bit difficult to get feedback.
Got it. I think from my experience, I think the key thing is how the tools actually minor is, have you created a safe environment for people that actually feel, feel safe to share, to be upfront. I think that's, to me, that's make the most difference, because once you got that, they will actually come up to you at the time they see fit. So that's kind of a bit of experience to share. And then last questions, and I want to make sure I got blessings. I think it's a quite pragmatic, practical question. So you got 30 some team or 20 some people, 11 direct report. How do you communicate when especially in day off, and how do you manage your time? How do you make sure not all the team members take the time off at the same time, or do you not care?
But first of all, let's say hi, Blessing. I is a former colleague, so I'm happy to see him here. We have a shared calendar, so everybody sees when everybody takes the day off. So the responsibility at least is shared. The last one who has to take leave to make the request when the other 15 are already on leave, it will have a hard time in making that decision. But other than that, we will work together on the consequences of that. I mean, if really there are other plans that people already made, I tend to be supportive. I've never been in situations where we couldn't ship things because everybody was on leave, or we have on-call support. So we always have one person that on rotation is available for let's say emergency things. But yeah, development might slow down.
So I think we can let's wrap up. If people want to stay, I don't know. We can't host a happy hour here. Usually we do. We might have extended conversations, but let's move on to another important topic that is a lot of people in their minds, right? So all the big techs are laying off. People are reconsidering their growth plan and so forth. So I think the two questions that are similar. So here, one is, do you think there are actually too many software workers or not? By the way, Dami, he's in your team, so I don't know what, do you scare him or something? The other one is similar. I think I'll package it together. Layoff and uncertain macroeconomies makes everything uncertain, right? So it feels like all the choices you make could be a wasted effort. I think what he's saying is, YJ, either could be a kind of a company thing, so all the things you work on might got cut, your projects might got canceled, or maybe individuals, right? You learn some skills but end up time wasted because you lose your job. How do you deal with this kind of uncertainty? How do you prioritize your time? How do you think about where to invest? Dami, what do you see in Asia or maybe even back home?
Well, I mean, if I compare the two, the situation is very different. But yeah, just to answer the question, I think, well, there are still a lot of companies hiring. We are hiring also. I mean, there are waves, and I think it happens that there are periods like last year and still now maybe where there is a lot of uncertainty. The one angle that at least this question inspires me about is the only one pattern that is clear about all this layoff is that there is no pattern. Meaning some layoffs have impacted people that were playing critical roles. Some layoffs has impacted people that has been in the company for a long period. I mean, high tenure and so on. So the most important thing is really be agile, like Wai-Ming were saying, and being prepared and invest on your own personal development, because our skill set is the only thing that is always extremely valuable in the market, regardless what our skill set is or where our strengths rely. So that's my view, at least. On the particularly how to adjust this in your working environment, probably I would still go back to the idea of trying to generate impact, and the time frame where I would look at how to prioritize the impact depend on the stage where the organizations that I work in is at. If we are struggling for being profitable, then short-term impact. If we are a big org, probably long-term and big and huge impact.
Got it. Thank you. I think we were actually doing research as well, because we train, tech talents engineers for a living. The good news is ZipRecruiter, a company in the US, actually did a survey, and they saw on average probably 80% of people who got laid off from these big techs within 2 months, they all found a job. So I think what's happening is Google, Netflix, all these places got the headlines, but these people are the good ones, especially get sucked up by the rest of the economy, because nowadays like every company is a tech companies. But obviously, I think the employment climate, the hiring climate is definitely adjusting. So be mindful, be careful with it. I think invest in your growth. I think one of the article I just read recently, exactly. I think a lot of Google employees, when it actually impacted them, they start to realize, it is your responsibility to take care of your own career. So always, figure out what to learn and how to grow yourself. I think that's critical. So I think that's the questions we have. It's at 9, right on the dot.